Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the RPD LMG. The RPD is another flavor of the Stoner 63. These two weapons are very similar, so I'm going to be comparing to it a lot and probably moving a little bit faster than normal so that I don't repeat myself. It's not really better or worse than the Stoner, it's just a little bit different. And in my opinion, it does perform a little bit better in 6v6 than the Stoner for whatever reason, but that might just be because I've kitted it better on my part. One of the first tips I want to give you is that you really should consider running the cavalry barrel because it will absolutely shred tanks, boats, vehicles, and any other kind of annoying streak. I'm going to recommend other barrels, but the cavalry barrel is always a fantastic alternative. Before we really get going in today's episode, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor, which is Raid Shadow Legends. You can see all the actual in-game characters putting the ornaments on the tree, or the holiday themed in-game characters, that is. I'm more of a demon spawn guy myself, but I wanted to promote Raid's Shadow Legends this fall because it's going to be a long winter. Let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, we're not doing big family Christmases, we're not going out, there's not a lot of big events. I'm staying at home by myself, and while this may appear to be a little tree, let me show you my actual real tree. That's it. We're having a small holiday here in the house, just me and my wife. Honestly, we're probably going to kick back, relax, and play a lot of mobile games, including Raid Shadow Legends. When I'm not playing Call of Duty, I'm playing a surprising amount of Raid Shadow Legends. It's a dark fantasy RPG with turn-based combat, and it reminds me of the games I used to enjoy a lot from my childhood. Please be sure to use my links below to download Raid Shadow Legends for yourself, to your mobile phone, or to PC while I tell you more about it. I think I've fully committed to the demon spawn path in this game. I've got 2 more here in training that will be joining the rest of them so that in the future I can push through much deeper levels of the demon spawn crypt. I also kind of just generally like their movesets. And this month, Raid is releasing their biggest ever update. The main event is already here, which is the Doom Tower, 120 floors and secret challenge rooms, every single one very difficult. And in order to help you get started taking on this tower, the Raid team is here to give you away a free super special champion, Bulwark. He's a powerful little void dwarf that's really good in clan battles, and he's going to be a huge help to your team in the Doom Tower. Well, what are you waiting for? If you want to get a head start on Raid Shadow Legends, all you have to do is click the link in the description to get a free Void Champion, XP booster, 50 gems, energy refills, and even an ultra rare Ancient Shard in order to help you along your path in the game. Once you've gone through the tutorial, if you're looking for your rewards, be sure to click the treasure chest in the upper right-hand corner that you can claim everything there, and your rewards will only be available for 30 days. So that's all you gotta do. Click the link in the description, download the game, and maybe you'll run into me. Alright, the sponsorship section is over, so let's get into the numbers, nuts, and bolts of the RPD. The RPD bullet velocity is 475 meters per second, which is the slowest in the light machine gun class and kinda slow in general. That's slower than most of the assault rifles and comparable to a few of the faster bullet velocity SMGs. For a light machine gun, that's kinda slow, which means if you're not doing anything fancy with the barrels, you might really have to lead your shots at long ranges. In my opinion, bullet velocity boosting barrels are your friend on this weapon, and in one of my classes, I'm going to show you my particular favorite one to use. What we all want to know is the damage. It can kill in either 4 or 5 shots, depending on how far away you are from the enemy. Up close damage is going to be 38, and long range damage is going to be 34, so only a very minor decline over that range. At this point in the video, you've probably noticed that I haven't played on Raid or Pine or the Mall or any of the new maps, and that's because this episode was recorded actually about an hour or 2 before the update launched, and this one's going to kind of buy me time while I have time to dig into Warzone and make some great guides for you there. But thankfully, none of the stats or performance variables on the RPD changed, so everything is still good to go here. Headshots will grant 1 less shot to kill at all ranges. It has the standard 1.4x multiplier, so headshots are always worth going for if you're in the mood for it. I typically don't. Call of Duty has just kind of trained me to go for body shots, but for those of you that are better gamers than me, headshots might be your friend. The maximum damage range is 51 meters, which I think is the same for all of the light machine guns, is the same as the Stoner and a lot of the burst rifles as well, and that is extremely long range. At least in 6v6, very, very few of your engagements will be outside of that range, so you should probably always assume 4 shots to kill. However, if you're shooting at enemies at very long ranges, like probably combined arms ranges, you might need just 1 more shot to kill, which won't be very problematic, and it won't really feel bad at all. The RPD's rate of fire is 652 rounds per minute, which is just kind of average for this game. It's not really fast or slow, definitely not the slowest in the LMG class if you're factoring in the M60, but it's pretty normal. It might feel a little bit slower. A lot of us use the Stoner for Dirty Bomb and just more than any of the other LMGs in general, so this one might subjectively feel a little bit slower, but it's only like just a little bit slower than the Stoner. When it comes to time to kill calculations, it's pretty fast. The 4-shot kill is 276 milliseconds, with the 5-shot kill increasing up to 368 milliseconds. Again, these are pretty respectable numbers. It still kills faster than any base assault rifle, but not by a whole lot. It's a little bit slower killing than the Stoner, but not that you would likely notice it in game. And the RPD is just a fairly fast killing weapon in general, as long as you're hitting your shots. It's just top tier performance. When it comes to handling stats, unfortunately, this weapon is very much so not top tier. Aim down sights time is 633 milliseconds, which is a little bit faster than the Stoner, but the sprint out time is a whole 100 milliseconds slower at 366, which you will notice. It can be annoying, it can be slow, and it can definitely get you killed in close quarters combat in 6v6. The sprint out time is a little bit brutal on the RPD, and I just want to point out again that this is slower than the Stoner 63. Oddly, the Stoner 63 had like a really fast sprint out time for whatever reason, so if you swap over to the RPD from the Stoner, this one might feel a little bit more rough. Because of that, hip firing into aiming down sights works okay, but it doesn't work as okay as it does on the Stoner. And like all of the light machine guns in this game, just building a pure hipfire class like the steady aim M60 class from COD 4, probably not a good idea, especially in a game where you have a lot of spammy shotguns that can delete you. The RPD has a normal light machine gun reload time of 7 seconds flat, which is very, very slow. And one of my classes actually does not recommend any magazine attachments, so it can be kind of brutal. For that purpose, I usually bring tomahawks. When people try to interrupt my reloading session, I make sure they get a blade to the face. Like all of the light machine guns in this game, it has a surprisingly tight hipfire radius, which is why some people think that it might be good for hip firing. It's a little bit tighter than the assault rifles, but only by half a milliradian, so not the biggest and not something that you're going to notice in full auto fire. When it comes to recoil, I found the recoil pattern to be lower and more predictable than the Stoner 63. The Stoner 63 tends to kick up a bit, it tends to kick out some smoke, and I think that the RPD does have the muzzle flash and smoke issue, but I found that the RPD is more stable for both horizontal and vertical recoil control, and thus overall easier to use in my opinion, even without kitting for minimum recoil. When you kit the Stoner and the RPD and the M60 for minimum recoil, they're all pretty much the same, but without those attachments, I prefer the RPD recoil over any of them. If you're playing 6v6, full auto assault rifle players will consistently beat you because those weapons are very easy to use and they move and handle a lot faster than yours. It's not that you can't kill them, it's not that you can't play slow and sit back and do your own thing, but it's not really for this mode. However, if you want to move into something like Combined Arms or Fireteam Dirty Bomb, the RPD is a much stronger competitor. You can really pummel people at long ranges, whereas the assault rifles probably won't perform super well at those ranges. You can spam down vehicles and objectives, and you can chew through armor more effectively because of the high damage per shot. It's just a great weapon for these modes, and I expect it will be good in Warzone 2. Again, this in-depth episode was recorded about 45 minutes now before the Warzone launch, but I don't see why the RPD won't be a good weapon in that mode if we're doing longer ranged engagements. When it comes to the iron sights, this is the last bit of the in-depth today before we move into classes. I rather like the simple iron sights. They're a tad small, they're smaller than they have been on this weapon in Call of Duty games in the past, and it makes it a little bit harder to track the targets, but for whatever reason they work for me. They're classic, they're simple, and I can usually see the people I'm shooting at, so optical attachments aren't really a true necessity. I've got two classes to recommend to you today. The first one is my 6v6 class that's going to work for most close quarters combat maps, and it's not going to be better than SMGs and stuff, but it is fairly competitive and you can kind of move in and out of close and long range combat. I'm not going to be running any optical attachments. My first attachment is the GRU suppressor, which keeps me off the radar, cuts my vertical recoil control, and it does hurt both the damage range and bullet velocity, which are very important things, but if I'm using this in a smaller map, it's not going to be as problematic. I use the GRU 5 milliwatt laser sight to significantly tighten up my hipfire accuracy because people are going to be rushing me, and even though it's not the greatest hipfire weapon, I'm going to have to hipfire more than I will on my other classes. I like running the infiltrator grip on this class, which is something I don't use on many weapons. I usually go for recoil reduction, but on this particular one, the infiltrator grip will boost my movement speed, my shooting movement speed, which is usually really slow, and my aim walking movement speed with no downsides, no penalties whatsoever. So in my opinion, that's kind of hard to beat. I use the very simple speed tape for this one. I'm not going to be drop shotting or doing anything crazy, and I don't want to hurt my aim down sights time anymore with any of the other attachments, so I just stick with the very simple one to get the pure bonus ADS time bonus and don't really fool with the drop shotting. And similarly, I run the wire stock to boost my sprint to fire time and make it just a little bit snappier and more competitive. If you kit the weapon this way, it is pretty much a pure bonus weapon, except we did lose some range and bullet velocity, but in a 6v6 map, you're probably not going to notice that. The bigger, better, and more traditional RPD class is, of course, the long range one. I like to start this one off with the Vision Tech 2X sight. It's really personal preference. You could use any of the sights on this list as long as you like them. I just kind of liked the 2X on this weapon, and I got good results for it. I do run the GRU suppressor again for all of the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. However, if we're doing long range, you might say, hey man, that damage range reduction and bullet velocity reduction is looking kind of rough, but we're going to fix that later. And that later is right now, because the next attachment we're going to put on is the 20.3 inch Task Force barrel. This gives me a small damage increase, doubles my damage range, doubles my bullet velocity, and the only downsides are that I lose a little bit of ammo, which we're going to easily fix with another attachment. And again, that makes it a pure bonus weapon. It's still performing far better than the base, 75% better as a matter of fact. We're going to use the Ember sighting point, which I use for pretty much all of my long range weapons. It helps me see people, tightens the hip fire a little bit. It does hurt my sprint to fire time and aim down sights time, but we're going to fix those up a little bit later. For now, let's cut back on some horizontal recoil with the Spetsnaz grip. This is just the best grip in the game if you're doing long range combat. Kind of hard to beat, and your only real downside is shooting moving speed, but if you're using this for long range, your shooting moving speed shouldn't matter a whole lot. For once, I actually recommend the very last magazine attachment. I usually avoid this one because I don't like the ADS time penalty, but this one gives me just everything I could ever want. Faster reload, like more starting ammo, more ammo capacity, everything with only a minor penalty to aim down sights time, and this kind of fixes some of the ammo penalties that I got from that special barrel. We're going to be running the GRU elastic wrap to significantly increase our aim down sights time and flinch resistance, though we do take a few hits to moving speed and sprint to fire time. So in order to fix that up, we're going to be running the KGB skeletal stock to increase that sprint to, or sorry, I should say decrease the sprint to fire time significantly. And the hip fire penalty does kind of suck, but it's roughly going to cancel out with that Ember sighting point optic. So it should be basically your normal hip fire and you're not really losing anything there. This is going to be the standard Warzone class, long range class, dirty bomb class, combined arms class, sit back behind a dune, head glitch, and hose people at long ranges classes that I know all of you love and do on a daily basis. Guys, that's all for this shorter in-depth episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something useful. We're going to have some in-depths on the new weapons and the new Warzone content just as soon as I can get them leveled up and get some stats out of the game. If you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.